Welcome to my F1 channel. Welcome to Peter on Pole. In the lead up to Drive to Survive Season 3, I'm going through every single episode from Seasons 1 and 2, giving a review per episode, and of course for Season 3, as we are all anticipating and waiting for the brand new season. Right now, Season 1, Episode 10, the final episode of Season 1. We've come here. It's called Crossing the Line. It's a perfect fitted title. Let's kick it off. I must say, what a season it's been. I've been on a great journey with you guys. I don't know how you lot feel, but it's been a fantastic series. It's been a fantastic season. 2018, man, I totally forgot how entertaining it was. There were so many thrills and spills. And then at the beginning of this episode, you've got a recap of basically everything we've seen from the beginning of the season. And you sort of, you don't forget, but you're well reminded of, oh my God, yes, there was that happening, and that battle took place, and what happened with Alonso, what happened with Danny Ricciardo, what happened with Max, Grosjean, there was all sorts of things going on. Williams, it was incredible. And Gunther Steiner's words come back, in Formula One, the highs are very high and then the lows are very low. And it's amazing just sort of how it comes full circle, because of course, as he's saying it this time, or as they've used his clip again, you're seeing the highs and you're seeing the lows. It's just absolutely incredible. Lovely piece of work from Netflix. It made me feel emotional. This episode made me feel emotional because of the fact it was the final stretch of the season, the fact that Fernando Alonso was bidding farewell, the fact that Danny Ricciardo was leaving Red Bull to go to Renault. And so there was a lot of emotion, a lot of things to, just to sort of to do one last time. There wasn't necessarily a title challenge on the cards. There wasn't really anything of that sort, but more so a case of, okay, one last lap, one last round, and soak it in, drink it in. And it was one of those, even when I watched it, because I watched the episode twice, because I just felt like I wanted to make sure I capture a lot of what Netflix was trying to do, or whatever the director was trying to do. And it was just, I found it epic in its own way, So, but yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed that part of the scene, the way that it sort of recapped at the beginning. When we last spoke on Danny Ricciardo a couple of episodes ago, we didn't sort of get to see his second half of the season, but it just went from like bad to worse. The last thing we saw from him was the Monaco Grand Prix back in the redemption episode. So check that out in the card, where he won the Monaco Grand Prix. And we don't really see much more else after that, other than he makes a decision to go to Renault. But in this episode, you see that it's actually not gone according to plan. The car has messed him up, has failed him so many times. Again, that narrative of the Renault engine not being the one, because there's always been an engine issue or something of that sort. There's a clip of him when he's retired early from the race, and he's walking back and he screams into his helmet. And I remember watching that race thinking, oh my God, he is fuming. And then I remember that on that race itself, I think after that scream, he loses his voice. His voice is completely gone. So the wonder probably why they didn't probably get any footage of that specifically, or whether he was just too angry that, Netflix just chose, look, we'll leave that for now. But yeah, so it was almost like, I'm so glad it felt like he was glad to get out of there. He just wanted the season to be over and done with when it came to the end. But obviously the race in Abu Dhabi, which is where this last episode takes place, you do feel that sense of, he is sad to be leaving. There's a clip of his agent, his advisor, who has his finger sort of on his mouth like this, where he's looking at the Red Bull garage. I think they're getting the car geared up for one last race. And it took me in a way of like, I wonder if he has any sense of regret of giving Danny this advice, whether there is a small element of maybe we should have stayed at Red Bull, because Red Bull's still a machine at the end of the day, it's one of the top drives in Formula One. You'll be lucky to get in that car. So it was sort of just like the whole looking around at the last, staff members one last time. Even the staff members, you find them in tears. Danny Ricciardo's mum as well, emotionally as well. Because, the relationship's been there, They've had a long relationship together. But, so yeah, so there's that element of it. And I think he just wanted to sort of beat Max one last time, before things end. And so Max, Danny, that's kind of what their thing is. Max Verstappen, however, my goodness. So we clip back to what happened to him in Brazil, where he's got contact with Esteban Ocon. And oh man, remember Ocon? So he's got some contact with Ocon at the Brazilian Grand Prix, and he's furious. He's absolutely fuming. He sees Ocon after they've gone back into the garage. He walks up to him, he's pushing him. The drama, the music then sort of suddenly changes as if there's going to be a massive fight is about to break out. But Max Verstappen, very punchy in this episode. Very, I grew to dislike him in this episode because of how it was almost like it was bullying antics. It was very much like, he wanted to start a fight, and then when he went into the press conference, they were talking what happened between you and Esteban, and then I have nothing to say about that other than he went into expletives, and it was like, okay, I got a lot of respect for Max in terms of him being such a young driver. He's so fast. It's incredible. He's a fantastic driver. But this episode definitely, or this season rather, showed his immaturity, and he needs to grow and learn there, because in that race, I don't know if he was leading the race, but what was crazy is that he had lapped Esteban Ocon because they were one of the back runners. And Ocon, okay, look, it's Ocon's fault for trying to come back and overtake the spot. I mean, what are you doing? There should be some blue flags waved and letting him through. But then Will Buxton says something that was quite interesting. He mentions that if Max needs to grow in this area because he needs to pick the battles. It's not every battle you see you fight for. And I guess if Max had just been a bit patient, he would have overtaken him and left him and carried on, because he wasn't racing him really. That wasn't his fight, that wasn't his battle. But that pride, that ego, I'm sure came through, and it sort of pushed him to make the mistake. And I guess when you're young and you want to be the best, you want to win every race, you want to take everything to the nail. It's like, that's what makes you a Formula One driver, to be fair. But at the same time, it's you got to pick your moments. You got to know when to do certain things, and that's what separates fast F1 drivers to world champions. One of the best things I've loved about this documentary is how Netflix, how the producer, the director, I don't know who to give the props to, I guess all of the above, and even Formula One as a sport, how they make every race interesting or mean something rather, because it's one of those where, you get into Abu Dhabi, and if you've watched Formula One, that final race of the year, the circuit isn't even that exciting. I mean, it looks nice. It's nice to look at, but for racing, it's not that great. And then, by that time, by the last round of the season, everything's kind of set in stone in a way. Things are in place, We know who's champion, we know who's top two, we know who's this, we know who's that. But for some reason, because, final race for Alonso, final race for Danny, the way they kind of created a story within the race is what I really do love. And it became about Max and versus Danny, because how Danny, I was saying, has had a bad second half to the season. Max actually improved since Monaco, because if you remember his Monaco Grand Prix, he'd crashed even in qualifying and started at the back of the grid. And remember, he was a bit unhappy, he was down, he was sad, obviously, because he didn't really he felt like it was his race. And there was a part of me, I didn't feel any issue with that with Max yet. I thought like, okay, you know what, he's somebody who's hungry, he wants to fight, he wants to win, and I hope he was happy for his teammate on that day. But now it looked like a guy who is determined will now. It's just, I don't give a damn. I'm here to beat anybody at all costs, which, Formula One drivers, they're not, not everyone's friends, it's not like that at all. But at the same time, it's a case of, you may come across as very arrogant, very cocky, very, somebody you don't like, a bit of a bully, if you know what I mean. And so when they went to Max, they said, will you miss Danny? And he goes, yeah, I mean, I won't miss him too much because he'll be in Formula One anyway. But I'll wave past him every time I lap him next season. And it was just like, yo, this guy, I don't know what it is, man. Like, you either love it or you hate it. It's that kind of character where I didn't like it. I don't love that kind of cockiness, or, if it's a bit like Fernando Alonso, which we'll get onto, I'm a bit more receptive of that than, say, the Max way. Because Max hadn't even done anything yet. You know what I'm saying? He hasn't won a title. He ain't done nothing, to be giving it the big. So With Alonso, however, you know, like for example, in the race towards the end of the Abu Dhabi race, Alonso is like I think he's in 10th place. He's in 11th place, chasing down for 10th, right? And the engineer for Alonso comes into his ear and he says, "Look, Alonso, next man." I think it was Sergei Sorokin or it was somebody else, but there was somebody there that he was chasing down the pack, and he said, "Come on, championship point up for grabs. You know, let's do it." And then Alonso's like, "I have 1,800 championship points," you know, and it was like, in that moment, depending what kind of guy you are, like, salute to the team engineer, that team radio guy, whoever it was, Alonso's engineer right there, whoever it was, because he was a good sport. He said, "Well, for me, let's make it 1,801. And I just loved that kind of, clearly he had that relationship with Alonso. And I think Alonso is somebody who's actually kind of funny. I do like him. At the end of the race, he's sort of doing a final sort of walk with his McLaren team press. I think it's with the team, and they're going to like the press media area. And he's walking, and they're saying, his staff are telling him, "Walk slowly, walk down. I mean, this is your final one. Walk very slowly. You know, everybody wants to embrace you," kind of thing, one last time. And he's like, "Oh, you want me to go full McLaren pace then, is it?" And it was just like, it was, don't get me wrong, it was a shot at McLaren for sure. But it was a shot that, you know, I don't think he's got anything against McLaren as such. It was just like, look at us, we are hopeless. You know, it's a we, it's not you or them, you know. So it was just funny how he did that. But, you know, do you get what I mean? Like, there's that kind of, you know, the cockiness in the sense of, you know, I have 1,800 points. You know, he's a 2-time world champion though. You know what I mean? So it's like nothing he said was a lie in that statement. Whereas with Max, I just felt like, you know, dude, like, wait till you've done something and then I can, you know, then I can see you talk up. So, but anyway, yeah, that was quite an interesting battle. So between Max and Daniel Ricciardo, final race, and Ricciardo's obviously is doing better in the driver out of the two drivers. He's ahead of Max, and interestingly, in terms of team strategies, you've got two. Obviously, each team's got two drivers, and then the strategist, the strategy guy, person, team, whatever it is, they usually give the best strategy to the driver that's gonna most likely win you some points, or most likely, you know, do well or better in the race. So Daniel Ricciardo being ahead and normally pitting first is the better strategy. So they've normally, you know, Daniel Ricciardo's ahead of Max Verstappen. However, they've pitted Max in first. So they've kind of given him the undercut, if that makes sense. So that, you know, as Danny's tyres wear out, when he goes into the pits, Max will overtake him. And you can hear it on the commentary, they were saying, well, you know, I don't think they care about being kind to Daniel Ricciardo. He's off to Renault, you know. And it's that kind of reminder of, you know, we're starting to see Red Bull almost, not in a bad light, of course not, but like in a sense of they're sort of looking at it from a business standpoint. Look, Max is going to be our driver next year. He's going to be our guy. Let's give him the better strategy. And of course, each race, these teams learn things. They develop the car from what they've last seen. So it was more than just, you know, oh, let's just let so-and-so win. It wasn't a case of that. It was a case of what advantages can we take from Max, you know, having the best strategy. Because if you give it to Ricciardo, fine, it's great. You know, it's great on the last day, fantastic, happy ending. But, you know, you don't really take much information there. And Danny's not going to let too much slip either, because he's going to Renault. And I'm sure he's going to take some information with him going over there. So it was a very good business decision. And this is the thing with somebody like a Christian Horner. He looks very stern. He looks very strict. He's very direct, but he's good for business. This is the kind of, you need the sort of iron in that team. And unfortunately, it's him. But I almost feel like Christian likes to play to that as well. So there is a bit of, you know, pantomime, if you will, going on there. In the episode as well, you get to remind yourself basically of the Haas and Renault rivalry. And there's a horrible crash with Nico Hülkenberg where he gets, I think he's in the blind spot sort of Romain Grosjean. Grosjean hits him and Hülkenberg flips. And again, you know, very dramatic scene. He's upside down. The team radio comes through and Hülkenberg's like, oh my God, you know, I'm hanging like a cow. Because he's literally, the car's upside down, but not necessarily on the floor, but his head is hanging, his body's hanging. Obviously, he's strapped in with the seat belts. Then there's fire that comes out the back of the car. And it's like, oh my God, not another heart-stopping moment, please. Like, we're done. And that's the thing with Formula One, you know, you just when you think you're done with such horrific situations. This season, that season alone, had so many situations. You remember back to Ericsson. You remember of course, we were talking about Jules Bianchi in the season. Alonso over Charles Leclerc. Now Nico Hulkenberg, you know. And he's talking about, you know, there's fire and, oh man, it's just, it was just a lot to watch. It was just a lot to watch. And so they're asking him if he's okay. And he's like, who was that? Who did that to me, kind of thing? What the heck happened? And then you hear it was Grosjean. And of course, you start to think, oh dear, Grosjean again. But Martin Brundle in the commentary obviously says, you know, he kind of explains. This is the great thing about Brundle on commentary, is that because he was a former Formula One driver, he's got a bit of expertise. He understands sort of how certain things can happen, and which to the naked eye we can't understand, or to the guy who's never driven a Formula One car before or never raced doesn't quite understand. And he mentions that, you know, Grosjean was in the blind spot of Nico Hulkenberg, so it's not his fault in that sense. And that kind of, you know, very quickly restored some dignity to Romain Grosjean. Max Verstappen is in the race. The engine's getting way too hot. He's been told to cool it down. And then he comes up against Ocon again. Oh dear. So it's between him and Ocon next. And as they come to overtake at one turn, Max, I mean, deliberately hits into the side of Ocon. Not an accident as such. It's just the two tyres hitting each other, which is fairly safe. So they've hit each other just to give a bit of good measure. I think he just sort of left a stamp on there and cracked on with it. Ocon's been told on the radio, listen, mate, let that one go. Let's not waste time racing Max Verstappen, because of course he's got his own race to deal with. And that's the thing about with Formula One, you've got your own little mini races going on amongst the whole big race. So yeah, it was just very, you know, I felt sorry for Ocon, because I felt like, damn it, you know, Max has got the better car, he's got the faster car. And so, you know, and if you're the kind of person who holds on to things or holds on to grudges and can't let some things go, yeah, that would really wind you up. Because I felt for Ocon. I was sitting there thinking, man, I would be so wound up by that. But, you know, you got to let it go and you know, live to fight for another day. Of course, Ocon, he's obviously trying to wait for a drive for the following year, and unfortunately he doesn't get that. So it's a very sad situation for Ocon. It's been sad, man. Flipping hell, Ocon. Like, give him some grace, give him something. Max Verstappen finishes ahead of Danny Ricciardo in third place in the podium spot. You just get a glimpse of Danny Ricciardo having his last pit stop with Red Bull, and I felt emotional about that. Max finishing ahead, and it kind of showed, because Max, I didn't mention before, Max had a terrible start to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix as well. So for him to come up and finish on the podium, he's really grown over the season. His character is maturing. He's still got a way to go, but from where he was, what we saw from him in Monaco to where he is now, fair play to the guy. You know, he's done a tremendous amount of work on himself, and he's done nothing but progress and grow. So that was excellent to see. But like, you know, the music kind of fades away. You're just like, wow, Danny, this is it. You know, Christian Horner thanks Danny on the team radio, and he says, you know, it's been a wonderful journey. I wish you all the best in your career. And as I'm listening to that, I'm feeling sad. And they've got the image of him saying it, so you don't normally get the team radio visually. You just hear it. On this one, you get Christian Horner, you know, sort of sending the message to him. And then Danny Ricciardo's response, it's as if he had a lump in his throat. You know, he was sort of like, thank you, Christian. Thank you, guys. And you could just hear him. And it made me well up a little bit, because I was like, wow, you know, what a journey this has been. And, you know, this is the thing. This has happened already. This happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago, time of recording. And yet I'm still getting hit by it. I'm still like wowed by it, you know? So it just goes to show Netflix did a great job trying to recapture some moments, trying to make us feel, because you have to watch it as if it's in a movie, you know. And if you do watch like that, it's more beneficial, because you really get to feel the entire season, the entire episode. So I loved every minute of that. And yeah, it was just amazing. At the very end of the Grand Prix, you get Alonso, Vettel and Hamilton all doing these little spinning donuts as like a sign of respect. It was like Alonso started it off, and Vettel and Hamilton joined as like a mark of respect. A man who once drove for Ferrari, a man who once was a teammate of Lewis Hamilton at McLaren. And it was just that honor, you know, what Vettel is so strange, you know, that a racing driver will do it by himself, and if somebody joins, it means there's that it's a nod to you, it's a little mark of respect, thank you for what you've done in the sport. And, you know, again, another sad emotional kind of ending as well, because you want to see people like Alonso on the grid. Personally, I do, because he's a fantastic Formula One driver. And in this, I see Alonso as a person who is more hilarious. He's a banter guy. He's not really a guy who's toxic. I've been hearing these kind of things about, Alonso is toxic. And don't get me wrong, earlier in the season when we were speaking about McLaren, Alonso, that kind of relationship, it was unhealthy, but I don't think it was necessarily due to the fact that it was Alonso's fault or McLaren's fault or whatever. I mean, in essence, it's McLaren's fault because they are, they make the decision. But I think Alonso got dealt a bad hand by people there. I think people judged him a bit too much. Yes, he's had a long career, so they've obviously had a long time to see him. But I do think that the words that have been used against him about him being toxic and arrogant and so on. He's more trouble than he is anything. Then I don't know. I don't necessarily agree. You get a glimpse of what's going to happen next season, where Carlos Sainz has been announced to be going to McLaren. They then pick up Lando Norris as well, so Stoffel Van Dorn doesn't keep his seat. Lando Norris, a young kid that's coming into the scene. The way Zach Brown is talking about both of them, he mentions Carlos is a quick driver. He's known Carlos for a while. He says he's quick. He's got that killer instinct. He's good with the sponsors. He's a handsome guy. I was like, what? But then, you gotta love Zach Brown. There's something about him, man. When he came to McLaren, I just had a good feeling. Like when Ron Dennis came back, I thought, yeah, now Ron's coming in. McLaren's is going to be back to its best. It did not work at all. In fact, that style of, the Sir Alex Ferguson style, it doesn't work anymore. It didn't work for McLaren in this case anyway. So they brought in somebody a bit more, and there's something about Americans, I guess, where they're a bit more. Is it more bubbly? Is it more cheerful? Is it more positive? They bring a vibe and an atmosphere with them where sometimes when you get the CEO of a British company, you might get that the typical stereotype might be that they're very strict and serious and stern. But then the American is like, hey, let's have fun kind of thing, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense there. But, since Zach Brown's come in, it's been a beacon of light in McLaren. So it's been quite a fun ride, I must admit. It's a big risk he's taken bringing in two new drivers, Zach Brown. Lando Norris is a very confident guy. He's very, he was asked the question, what do you think about, Stoffel Van Dorn, Magnussen, Sergio Perez? They've all been in McLaren before. They've only been 2 years. And he said, well, that's not me because I'm faster than them. I'm better than them. And it was like, oh, here we go. Okay. He was asked, because he's so young, he was asked, do you have a license? And he's like, yeah, I got points on them though. And then, and they asked, oh, what for? And he goes, for speeding. And it was kind of like, okay, we're getting this guy next year, But yeah, McLaren's looking strong, looking forward to the next season after this horrific year it's been. You go and get a clip of Gunther Steiner. It comes full circle at the end. He gives a perspective to his staff. He gives a very good speech. I've criticised Gunther for his leadership and his management. But, at the end, he sort of tells his staff, listen, look, we finished 5th in the constructors. That is, if you said that to me at the beginning of the season, I would have bitten your hand off and everybody here would have. But be happy, be proud that you're disappointed for not finishing in 4th, because it shows you how far the team has gone. And he kind of gave a very good rallying speech there. I do still wonder whether Kevin Magnussen and Grosjean are the right two to have for the following season. We'll find out in season 2. Stick around, because I'm going to be doing a review for every episode of season 2 Drive to Survive. I cannot wait. The best, my favorite thing about Drive to Survive is Christian Horner. I have to admit it, because the way when he starts talking, you're engaged, you're listening to him, you're hearing what he has to say, and he says, Formula One is addictive. Everybody's got this perception that after Abu Dhabi, the final race of the season, we just all pack up and go home. Oh no! It's the next day. We're back onto it again. You're working on the car. You're back at the factory. He says Christmas is an inconvenience. When he dropped them lines, I said, Christian with the bars. Yeah, I love Christian Horner in this, because he's always got the one-liner. He's got something to say, and I'm always entertained by him. I'm always intrigued by him. And so Netflix, keep him in there. Keep him as one of the main pieces in there, because the way he speaks, the way he narrates, he's great for the interview. It's just fantastic. And then at the end, you get one-liners from all the drivers, all the teams, just great punchy little lines. Looking ahead to season 2, you're watching sort of a behind-the-scenes footage of them putting their mic on when they're sitting down in front of the camera. Do I look at you? Do I look at the camera? What do I say? Do I just say my name? You get a bit of those shots, and it's like, all right, let's do this, and it's like they're game on, and it's amazing, like, the footage that they put up together. It made me so excited and so gassed for season 2. And yeah, that is the ending of season 1. It's been a hell of a ride. I look forward to season 2. I hope you do as well. Like the video if you like the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment below. Let me know what your best part of season 1 was. Who was your favorite character? Who was your worst character? What did you miss? What did you remember? What made you happy? What made you sad? I'd love to know in the comment section below. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's have some dialogue. Until then, lights out.